Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1706A, and today's date is November 2nd, 2018, and the title of the episode is, Will the U.S. Sanction the Central Bank's Payment System? Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk to all the Trump supporters. Noble Gold has just released a 24-karat solid gold commemorative Trump 2020 Freedom Coin. The demand for these has been staggering, and I have to tell you, there's now a waiting list for them. And if you're a Trump supporter and you want to own one of these, right now, if you get on their waiting list, they are currently discounting the coin over $50 per coin, which is an incredible savings for this commemorative coin. So to get on the waiting list and reserve yours, go to TrumpCoin2020.com to secure your coin. The link is at the bottom of this video. To make it a lot easier, all you have to do is click on it. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, in the end, we know the entire plan is to go after the central bank. Everything that we're seeing now with unemployment, with wages, with manufacturing, showing that the economy is doing fantastically, this is all part of the plan. This is part of the plan to make the mainstream media, to make the deep state completely confused and make it so they cannot attack Trump, his administration, and it will allow them to do what needs to be done in the background, setting up the entire narrative for this incredible transition. Now, we know that the payroll numbers, they're completely manipulated. The BLS numbers, ADP numbers, all these numbers that are coming out have been manipulated since the very beginning. Actually, nothing has really changed since the manipulation. Trump has just continued with what has been done before and actually has taken it and manipulated it a little bit more. Why? Because he wanted to show the economy doing fantastically. And now we have the numbers out and they're telling us that wages are starting to rise. Employers are starting to hire. More people are getting jobs. And we need to remember something very, very important. It's very easy to manipulate these numbers. And if we look back in time, we've seen this time and time again. When the unemployment numbers reach a certain point, and they're very, very low right now, 3.7%. This brings us all the way back to 1969. Whenever this happens in a central bank system, we enter a recession. And if you look back in time and you look at all the different recessions from the 70s all the way up to the present day, we've hit a recession every time unemployment has dropped. This is how the central banking system works. Yes, they can manipulate the data. Yes, they can push this as far as they can go. But eventually what happens is everything will break down. And Trump, those people behind him, they know this. But they need to set the plan up before they allow this to happen. They need to show that the economy is doing fantastically. They need to continually mention it and let everyone know that look how great the employment of the United States is. Look how great manufacturing is. Look how many jobs are coming back. This will stop the mainstream media, and they're having a very difficult time trying to say that, well, is this Obama's economy? Is this Trump's economy? They will never come out and tell you that this is manipulated because it will fall back on Obama and the rest of the people and the mainstream media and the central bank for going along with this the entire time. And they're trying to counter this whole entire thing, but it's very, very difficult and they can't do it. And if you look at like the U.S. labor force participation rate, we've hit an all-time low of like 62.7. It went up a little bit to 62.9. But if you really look at it, we've been stagnant, flatlined. Really hasn't moved much. It hasn't shot up or anything like that. Because what Trump and those behind him are doing, they're keeping everything status quo. Yes, the statistics look great. On paper, it looks fantastic. But in real life, the entire economic system is falling apart. And we can see this with what is happening on the streets, what's happening really in housing, how the traffic is drying up, how retail, they're closing up shops, how retail sales are declining. That's how you know. Because if people aren't making the money and people aren't getting the jobs, aren't getting the high-paying jobs, they're not going out and spending. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Actually, we see factory orders. The growth has slowed in September. And a lot of these factory orders and a lot of this has been because of the wars that have been happening out in the Middle East. This is why the United States has been producing. But once these wars start to dwindle down, once these wars end, what happens to manufacturing? What happens to the factory orders? They're going to slide. And we're seeing the beginning stages of this. Now, Trump knows this. The patriots behind him know this. They know they can only keep this illusion alive for a certain period of time. And eventually what's going to happen as the value of the dollar decreases and as these countries take back control of their monetary system where they don't want to sell their oil using the dollar anymore, all these dollars are going to rush back to the United States. And I'm talking about the central bank dollars, the Federal Reserve notes that you have in your wallet. Those are going to come back to the United States. A lot of it is going to be electronic, but a lot of it's going to come back to the United States. And what this means is we're going to see inflation. Now, what's very interesting, where people saying, oh, we haven't really seen inflation. Of course, the central bank is out there saying, wow, we're really trying to get inflation up. Well, they've really been tricking us because they've been pushing inflation into different areas like housing, for one, the stock market, out of this country. And even with products, we've seen inflation, but it was hidden from the public. And we've talked about this before. But for those people that don't realize this or have never seen this before, when you go to the grocery store and you look at some of the items, a lot of the packaging, what they're doing is they're making the packages smaller and smaller and smaller. They're leaving out certain items or they're using different ingredients. One area that you can look is ice cream, where you used to have a larger size container. They shrunk the container. They made it look like it's the same size, but it's actually smaller. This is actually inflation because what they're doing is they're trying to hide it by shrinking the packaging. The same thing with like tuna and things like that. Most of the meat inside, the fish meat that's inside of the can is not really tuna. And what they do is they swap things out. But they're getting to the point where they can't do this anymore. And we're going to see certain products, well, they're going to be a little bit more expensive. And this is not because of the tariffs and all of this. This has been coming a long time now. This is why we've been following this. Actually, we've been looking at the different packaging. Actually, people have been writing in for a very long time saying that, ooh, this package is different. I don't have the same number of crackers in this package. This is inflation. And now they're kind of stuck because what do? You design the package to go smaller and smaller until you have nothing? No, eventually what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to raise the prices. Clorox is going to be raising the prices. Coca-Cola is going to be raising their prices. We see many manufacturings out there, Delta, JetBlue, the airlines. They don't have to do with packaging. They're just going to have to raise their costs, their prices on flights because of what? Jet fuel. Trucking, same thing, fuel moving up. Even Apple, MacBook Air, and iPad Pro, they're going to see an increase in prices. And this is a long time coming. We're going to see everything get out of control. Again, this is part of the plan to bring this system down. I've said it many, many times before. We're going to go through a very bumpy road. Now, there was a new poll that was done this week, and it showed that 70% of U.S. firms operating in southern China, they're considering delaying further investment in the country. Again, this is part of the plan. This is step one of the plan, to get these countries to say, you know something, maybe we shouldn't be here. Our secrets are being, stolen. They're being sold off. We're being spied upon. And maybe this is not cost effective. Now, are these companies going to come directly back to the United States right away? No, that's the second part of the plan. The first part of the plan is to show companies why you shouldn't be in there. Now, of course, what companies are going to do is they're going to say, well, let's look at different countries and maybe we can move our base of operation. And this is what countries are starting to do. The second part of the plan is to create incentives to make it easy for these companies to come back and make it worthwhile for them to come back. This is the second part of the plan. The first is to impose tariffs to show these companies that they're being spied upon, that their secrets are being sold off, and show that this is not a country that you want to be in. Next is to give tax incentives, make it easier for manufacturers to operate in the United States. A lot of the regulations that were put into place in the United States was to get rid of the manufacturing. Remember, the deep state, they wanted all manufacturing out of the United States. How do you do this? You make it very difficult to survive here. You make it so they don't make a profit. You make it so they can't actually operate here. Now it all has to be reversed. We're at the beginning stages of this. And as time goes on, we're going to see a lot more manufacturers come back once they see there's deregulation, once they see incentives, once they see, oh, we can operate here, we can make a profit here. Then, and only then, will companies start to come back to the United States. And we can see that this is the beginning stages. Remember, everything that we see right now, well, it's such a short period of time. We have to remember that the deep state, the central bankers, have been planning this for many, many years. It didn't take 2 years to get rid of all the manufacturers. It took many, many years. And they did it in stealth mode, so no one really realized it, and no one really paid attention to it until it was too late. Now it all has to be undone because we're headed towards this great collapse of the system. And this is what is happening right now, and it is a rush job. We see that a lot of gold is being moved into China, into Russia, into India, and many of the Eastern countries. And what we're seeing here is that the United States is not taking on any new gold. Actually, from the Switzerland, the bank there, we see Switzerland imported 92 tons of gold from the UK. Now, we know, of course, that the UK is not a gold-producing country. So these are 400-ounce bars from UK bullion banks that are bought by Swiss refiners to break down into 1 kilogram bars and ship to China and India. The majority of the 33 tons that came from the U.S. in September is also 400-ounce bars from U.S. bullion banks. Most of the UK and U.S. gold is likely to come from central banks. Remember, the central banks do hold gold. We don't know how much they're holding. They don't allow us to audit them. The gold in the United States hasn't been audited since 1950. We don't know if the 8,100 tons are actually there. Most likely they're not. Most likely it was leased out, and they've been shipping the gold out this entire time. This is why central bank, all the banks have been telling us that gold is not important. It's not real money. They don't want people thinking about gold, which means everyone should be thinking about gold. Everyone should be investing in gold. Everyone should have gold. And everyone should have silver. Remember, the central banks were out there telling you that, hey, criminals use cryptocurrencies, terrorists use cryptocurrencies. Guess what? You should have cryptocurrencies. Whatever the central bank says, do the opposite. If they tell you to hold all their Federal Reserve notes, don't. Because as we can see over time, gold has been around for thousands and thousands of years. Yes, cryptocurrencies are new, but they're putting out a message which tells us they don't want you to hold it. And anytime a central bank tells you that, in my opinion, I do the opposite. I do the complete opposite. Maybe right now you don't see the benefits, but later on you will. Think about the Great Depression, where the U.S. government said, listen, we need your gold. We'll give you $20 per ounce for your gold, and this will help the government. Well, as soon as the government received all the gold, they upped the gold price to $35. Now, those people who said, you know something? I don't want the paper. I'm going to hold on to the gold. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to keep it. Guess what happened? Their $20 an ounce worth of gold that they had automatically went up to $35 an ounce. And if at that time, if they had 10 ounces or 20 ounces or 5 ounces, guess what? They made out. Now we see the U.S., and this is coming through Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. They are placing sanctions on Iran. But what's very interesting is they're going to place sanctions on the global financial messaging service, which is SWIFT. Because what they want is they want SWIFT to disconnect from Iran. Now, I'm not going to talk about the Iran sanctions and things like that. What I am going to talk about is how they want to sanction SWIFT, which is the central bank payment system, if they don't disconnect from Iran. And listen to what Mnuchin says. And I know Mnuchin is a Goldman boy, but the message is very interesting. Mnuchin said, we advised SWIFT that it must disconnect any Iranian financial institution that we designate as soon as technologically feasible to avoid sanction exposure. And Mnuchin went on to say, SWIFT is no different than any other entity, which means the Trump administration is not afraid to go ahead and sanction the central bank. I mean, think about it. What other president would sanction SWIFT? Never. They would never do this. What other president would contradict the Federal Reserve? Well, Reagan has done this once before, but he was shot. We know that Abraham Lincoln did. He was assassinated. We know Kennedy did. He was assassinated. We know Andrew Jackson did. There was an attempt of an assassination. So Trump is out there, and he is contradicting, getting ready, not afraid to sanction the central bank systems. This means that he's not afraid to bring down the central bank itself. And what's very funny is that Trump put out a tweet today, and it looks like the Game of Thrones, where it says sanctions are coming November 5th. Now, most likely this is for Iran and things like that. But again, if SWIFT doesn't do what they want, they're not afraid to sanction them, which is very telling. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.